Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Kris. This is part 2 of Napoleon in Italy, part 2, Battle of Arcole. Was it Arcole? Yeah, it was. It was. We went back a little bit because Napoleon was sending that man around, and then he was going to work his way up, and so we were going to go back a little bit for that. So we went back, and here we are. So now we're on with the video. I have cider donuts, and now I have peach cider. I'm going to enjoy.
Eastern bank of the Alpone River to hit Arcole from the south. He himself rides to the bridge to try to get the attack moving. He finds hundreds of French troops sheltering behind the causeway, unwilling to face the Austrian fire. General Augereau grabs a standard and begins to advance. This highly romanticized depiction was painted 2 years later. "Grenadiers," he cries, "come and seek your color." In reality, none had the courage to follow him. Then, the commander of the Army of Italy himself draws his saber, picks up a standard, and runs forward. There is withering fire all around. Several men fall wounded. His aide-de-camp, Colonel Murat, is killed. Another aide-de-camp, a Polish officer named Sulkowski, recalls, "The soldiers saw him, and none of them imitated him. I was witness to this extraordinary cowardice, and I cannot conceive it." With the French infantry refusing to follow their officers, the assault on the bridge ends in abject failure. A well-timed Austrian counterattack drives them back down the causeway. In the rout, Napoleon's horse loses its footing. He tumbles into the swamp and has to be hauled out by his aides. That evening, General Gueux launches his attack on Arcole from the south. The defences are less formidable on this side, and his men fight their way into the village. Arcole, at last, has fallen. But that night, Gueux's men are ordered to pull back. Napoleon is preparing to retreat. If, as he expects, Davidovich has continued his advance down the Adige Valley, Napoleon must withdraw now or face encirclement. His bold maneuver appears to have failed. Then, at 4 a.m., Napoleon receives a report from Rivoli that changes everything. Not only does Vaubois still hold the town, he hasn't even been attacked yet. Napoleon's line of retreat remains secure for at least a few days more. It's all the reassurance he needs. He immediately cancels his retreat and issues orders to attack.
Do they still have the town? Sorry, I got some donut. Do they still have the town? Because his men retreated. Because if they don't have the town, if it was Croatia, if they were paying attention, they could come back in. But they might have just said, it ain't worth it. And they could have just kept going. Just curious.
Napoleon has lost the element of surprise, and Alvinzi is now planning his own counterattack. Overnight, his troops edge forward. Provera to Belfiore di Porcile, Mitrovsky back into Arcole. Both armies are on the move before dawn. Massena sends skirmishers into the marshland. When the Austrians arrive, bunched up on the causeway, they make easy targets. After a sharp fight in which an Austrian general is killed, Massena's men are driving the enemy before them. Augereau, however, cannot get close to Arcole. The causeway is still swept by Austrian musket fire and canister from across the Alpone. Napoleon orders troops to cross downstream at Albaredo, but the Austrians now have 2 battalions guarding the crossing point. French attempts to float or swim across the river come to naught. Day 2 of the battle ends in stalemate. Many soldiers have to camp amid the marshes and get what food and rest they can. Napoleon will try once more to break through, but he is running out of time.
This is the most I've seen, probably, it come across as like Napoleon being frazzled would be the good way to phrase it, that I can remember.
Davidovich, who by now has received several urgent requests from Alvinci to advance, finally attacks on the 17th of November. Vaubois' outgunned division breaks. The Austrians take Rivoli and 1,000 prisoners, and nearly capture Vaubois himself. With Davidovich on the move at last, Napoleon must force a decision at Arcole or retreat. The bridge at Arcole has proved too tough to crack. So Napoleon switches tactics. Augereau's division will cross the Alpone and attack Arcole from the south in force. A column is sent 10 miles south to cross at Legnago, and then race back up the eastern bank to support him. Massena will advance up the causeway in support, while also protecting the left flank. That night, the French assemble a pontoon bridge over the Alpone. Augereau's division begins crossing before dawn. But at sunrise, Austrian gunners in Albaredo spot the bridge and score a hit, knocking it out of action. Only the 51st Demi Brigade is across, though it gamely begins to...
I was about to ask, they have a couple going here, one group going here, another one circling all the way around. I was going to ask, what about these guys? I thought maybe they would feint a charge in here to keep them occupied. Because, I mean, look, it doesn't look like it's that far away. I mean, clearly it's probably a mile, well, several miles, well, a kilometer or two, I don't know, however you judge it by. But it's hard to look at a map and be able to tell the distance of things. Yeah. Because 10 miles look like a pretty good distance. So maybe it's probably 1.5 to 2, maybe. But I would think you'd need these guys to be occupied. But now that I think about it, if you are initiating a battle, that would perk them up. You know, they would hear those rounds, so they would know, okay, well, something's happening. And they might send reinforcements down to check it out, which then now you're going to meet here instead of being able to kind of get that surprise attack. So I don't know what I'm talking about, apparently. Sorry.
To advance on Arcole. Massena's advance is also hamstrung by a broken pontoon bridge. To add to the crisis, the Austrians launch an attack on the fragile French bridgehead. Napoleon gathers every available gun to blast the Austrians, who fall back under a withering barrage. The bridges are quickly repaired. But as the French advance, they encounter stubborn opposition on both sides of the Alpone. A bloody seesaw battle surges back and forth along the causeways. neither side can deploy its troops nor gain an advantage. Around 3 p.m, the French column from Lenyago arrives, threatening to turn the Austrian flank. Just as Arcole seems about to fall, the Austrians launch a ferocious counterattack across the bridge. Brigadier General Robert is killed. His troops fall back in disarray. The panic is contagious. Augereau's men lose their nerve and fall back to the bridge. The moment of crisis has arrived. But while the enemy has just used his last reserves, Napoleon can call on Massena's unengaged troops, including the elite 32nd Demi-Brigade. Their sudden counterattack turns the tide. Massena's men sweep up the causeway, taking scores of prisoners, as Augereau's division resumes its advance. As they approach Arcole, Napoleon arranges a small ruse de guerre. 25 of his elite escort sweep in from the east, blowing bugles to feign a mass cavalry charge. In the evening light, it's enough to scare the remaining garrison into abandoning the village. As the French continue their advance, Alvinci orders his exhausted, demoralized army to retreat east, to Montebello, to protect its lines of communication. The 3-day Battle of Arcole has been a messy, bloody affair, with no great tactical flourishes. Napoleon's margin of victory is narrow, and a third of his army are casualties. But he has done enough, for now.
Boy, that changed rather quickly, didn't it? Went from not looking good to all of a sudden he's just overrunning them.
Alvinci may be withdrawing, but Davidovich remains a threat. The next day, Napoleon sets off at his customary pace with Massena's division to reinforce Vaubois. Augereau takes a different route to threaten the Austrians' line of retreat. The confusion that follows between Alvinci and Davidovich verges on farce. Alvinci writes to his corps commander, informing him that he will support him by resuming his advance. But Davidovich, having heard of the defeat at Arcole and now directly menaced by Napoleon, is already retreating. On receiving Alvinci's letter, however, he tries to turn his army around, leading to such chaos that he has to immediately countermand that order and resume his retreat. The end result is that both Austrian armies are soon withdrawing. And with exquisitely poor timing, gallant old Wurmser chooses this moment to launch his supporting attack from Mantua. He does at least secure some much-needed supplies, at a cost of 800 casualties. It has been a bruising campaign for Napoleon. By some estimates, he has lost more men than the Austrians. He has suffered his first defeat in battle, and won a costly, messy victory at Arcole. But he has beaten the odds and thrown back the enemy. What's more, his heroic conduct at the bridge at Arcole will soon take on a life of its own. Artists and pamphleteers turn a slightly embellished version of events into a sensational piece of personal PR that captivates France. With Napoleon's active encouragement, the world is witnessing the birth of the Napoleonic legend. A powerful force that will inspire loyalty and devotion for many years to come. For now, both armies settle into winter quarters, as December brings bitter cold and heavy snow to northern Italy. In Mantua, the Austrian garrison is near its limit. Starvation beckons, though Wurmser is determined to hold out to the last. The Austrians will have one last chance to save the city. A final offensive to decide the outcome of the war in Italy. A big thank you to
Epic History TV. This is good. Man, I haven't done a Napoleon video in quite a while. Apologies to people who like to see that stuff. But it was good. I'm going to jump into number 5 next. So that will happen. But until then, we're going to go ahead and end it here. I'll be honest, I don't think Napoleon, I don't think a lot of people have ever heard of him. He's I don't know. He's got a small following of people who kind of know a little bit about him. So I don't know if many people do, but you should watch my videos because I do cover him. He should get a lot more, publicity. So that's what I'm here for. I'm his PR agent. All right. I got a thanks button on the channel. You can click it and donate. You can request videos. You don't have to, but any donation to the channel is appreciated. There is the subscribe button. If you've watched these videos, you should just click it and just kind of deal with it. Give a thumbs up. If you give a thumbs down, there is this YouTube partnership program. People who do thumbs downs, they're allowing them to go on, they're sending them to the UK to go on a big Ferris wheel, and then they just detach it and let it roll right into the water. Is it the Thames River? Yeah. And so yeah, that could happen. Hopefully soon. To the thumbs downers. But until next time, you have a good day, have a good night.